Good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for joining me this afternoon for Patron Management in Evergreen, Indiana. I am your presenter, Britt Dorsey. I am your Development Support Administrator for the Evergreen, Indiana Library Consortium. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns. You can reach me by my phone number there on the screen or email address. Um, in regards to this training, previous or future training, things that you want to see, maybe the general like learning how to do the software isn't enough. Maybe you want to see something a little more in depth. Please let me know. So we are focusing on patron management today. So we are going to focus on the resources that will help you with patron management. We have the consortium shared circulation policy, which will help with defining certain aspects of patron profiles or maybe how they might be eligible to receive a library card or an account at your library. The circulation procedures guide will include information about, and these should all be live links available in the PDF. Allows information about like patron profile types, billing, how to edit records, things like that if it's not found in the training manual or knowledge base, which is next. This is a searchable knowledge base of documentation for Evergreen, Indiana, but this link is directly linked to the circulation section. Every time I come in here, I notice, oh, I need to add that or that. So if you do not see something that you feel needs documentation, please let me know and I will get it on the list and try to add it as soon as I can. But this is great because you can search these. So let's say you're trying to find out how to register a patron, what all of those fields mean. So you can search, start typing in patron registration, and it pops up right there in the knowledge base and takes you directly to that information. The patron profile matrix, this will come in handy in some cases today when we are talking about profile types. These are defined at the consortium level and are usable by all member libraries. They just kind of define the user type, what they are kind of allowed to do within either your local library or the consortium wide, and some notes and stuff. And I think we'll talk about that a little more later. Evergreen Indiana Training Server, a great sandbox, Evergreen web client place to practice what you have learned. I linked that in the patron management exercises document. It resets every week, and so you don't have to worry about breaking anything. You can practice paying bills, registering patrons, updating patrons, using user buckets, things like that. So it's a safe space to practice all of these functions and procedures that you might be using at your own library without fear of messing things up or working with real patron data. And then I went ahead and linked the patron management shared documentation, the link I shared in the chat, which includes, I might change this name so you know that it's the slide deck, that glossary of terms and patron management exercises document. So I want to try and keep these shareable at all times, and you will probably have access to the shared training manual, which will hopefully in the future include more shareable documentation for all of the other webinars. So like practice exercises and things like that, and maybe some shared other like PDFs and things like that for even like cataloging, circulating holes, things like that. So. And then, as always, our evergreenindiana.org website, your one-stop shop for all things Evergreen, Indiana. Today in the agenda, we are going to first look at account registration, so updating versus creating and how to. Then we're going to look within the patron account, so the layout of the patron account and the functions that you are able to do within there. And then we're going to look at account management, so how can we add or maintain notes within the patron's account? And how do we renew counts when the patron comes in and asks to renew it at the end of their profile type's expiration date? Then we are going to look at notices. So circ and overdue reminders. I might have added a few more. So what formats do they come in and how often? And then hopefully, I'm sure hopefully we'll have time to take a look at user buckets, how to create them, what maybe you could use them for. I can give examples of what I use them for. So for like batch editing and tracking. Account registration. The proof of identity and residency. This has changed in the last year. In the new Evergreen Indiana shared circulation policy, the language has changed to provide a little more flexibility and autonomy to the libraries themselves. When you look at the shared circulation policy, and we might have talked about a little in the introduction to circulation, that proof of identity and residency or residence for the purpose of account establishment shall be determined by and described in individual Evergreen Indiana member library circulation policies. Remember, our shared circulation policy for the consortium should be considered supplemental. So it should complement your local circulation policy. When you think about eligibility by residence or location of owned property, we have to think about identification. So, does their provided identification include their eligible address? And location, does the address they provide fall in one of your served areas? There is a link here to examples of identification. In the procedures guide, it just lists a couple options like a valid Indiana driver's license, state ID, other government issued identification, and other options like that. So these are examples of what you might be able to use for that. An option that we have within Evergreen to determine if they are in your service area is this function called Locate Address on Map. It is available on the splash page. And let me go ahead and bring it up. I'm going to bring up MIG. And I'm going to click Locate Address on Map. So I've clicked on it, and now we have the ability to search a specific address. So I'm going to put in, it's actually Thorntown Public Library's address. Now it can be a little bit of a stickler when it comes to entering the data. So let's see if so it looks like you want to enter the entire names, don't use abbreviations. So 124 North Market Street. And then when you click on it, it's going to zoom in very closely, especially if you put in an actual address, and it's going to pinpoint that on the map. You can scroll back out if you like. But this green area indicates that it is a served area for an Evergreen Indiana library. When you click on it, it's going to tell you the library, if it's an Evergreen Indiana library, what type of service district it is, and then it's going to give you a link to their website. And this is going to be available regardless of if you put an address in. So let's say, so here, Park County Public Library covers this area right here. And if we click on this, there's Vermilion County. And Lafayette, here's West Lafayette. See, they have this little itty bitty, well, not really itty bitty, but in this map it looks itty bitty, section in Lafayette for West Lafayette on their service area. So this might be helpful in determining their location. So let's look at a couple scenarios. The first scenario we're going to look at is a new account in Evergreen. So we're working at the circulation desk, and someone comes in and requests a library card. They don't believe they have ever had an account before. And based on what your local policy is on proof of identity and eligibility, you have confirmed that they are eligible, but you don't know if they already have an account or if they need to have one created. So steps for patron account creation. First, we need to search. We're going to use patron search to confirm there isn't a duplicate account. And then we might determine the profile type that the patron is eligible for. Are they a resident? Do they actually fall in a contracted area, or maybe they might actually be a reciprocal borrower, but they're eligible for a card. Once you have determined that, you can start registering a new account for them and click Register Patron to open the form. Next, we will fill in the fields, and enter required and recommended data, and then we will save to create that account within the web client. So first, we always want to ensure that the patron does not already have an Evergreen Indiana account, whether it's from your library or another library system. We do this by searching the patron database, and we also do this to avoid making duplicate accounts, to make sure maybe if there are any outstanding payments that are left over, are handled, and then also it might also speed up the registration process whenever possible. And I do want to mention that there will be times when a duplicate account is appropriate, and we'll go over into that a little later. So first, we want to search for patron. You can either access it from the search for patron by name link on the homepage or from the search for patrons by name in the search top navigation menu. First, we will search by name. That's usually the first thing we want to do when we search. We have last name, first name, and middle name options to search for a name. If you need a few more options, you have that little arrow pointing down. When you click on it, it's going to open up additional fields that you can use to search for the patron. You want to make sure that when you are searching for patron accounts, that you are searching the entire consortium's account database. So make sure that your library, that it's looking at EG-IN. That means that you are searching the entire consortium. And then you also want to make sure you have the include inactive checkbox enabled, because we want to make sure we include those accounts that may be really old, but they might have like fines or material still on the account. You also want to maybe look at your grid configuration when you first load. Let's bring it up. I'm actually going to. So when you first load the, let's see if I can reset. Um, When you look at your grid configuration in the patron search results, there might be a bit of information that you don't need. So this might be one of the areas you want to customize for your workstation and maybe focus on the columns that will help maybe define the person on whether they are a match or just helpful information. So in this example, we have, the first name, last name. Profile should be like if it's a resident, non-resident, their card number, ID. This is actually more useful for us at the admin level. That's what we use when we are looking directly in the database. So like Kristen and Jeremy, they use that user ID and not the barcode number. Let's say this our search for April Townsend, we were looking for this person, and we conclude that our search of the database that this patron does not have an Evergreen, Indiana account. So we want to determine what kind of library card they can receive. And this is where the link, I believe, to that profile matrix or the procedures guide. If you recall, the green Evergreen Indiana library card is synonymous with full access. So patrons who receive a green library card are residents, non-residents, outreach, plaque card holders, staff, cards, or temps. The blue Evergreen Indiana card means that it is for local service only, meaning they can only check out and request material that is owned by their home library. So in this instance, it'd be you because you are the one that is assigning them a library card for owned by your library. Blue cards are given to reciprocal borrowers, student and teachers, and transitional users. For those libraries that choose to use their own custom library cards, they will either have green or blue stickers to signify full consortium access or local access only. But what do these profiles mean? What's the difference between resident and non-resident? What can a reciprocal borrower do? The patron matrix lists each profile type, how long they are active for until they expire, how many items they can have out at one time, fine information if your library charges overdue fees, and notes specific to that profile type. For example, a resident has full access to the consortium. Their account is good for 2 years. They can have up to 100 items out at one time, and they can request up to 30 holds at one time. Reciprocal borrowers, however, are here under the access to is limited. Um, they only have access to their home library. Their account is only good for 1 year at a time. They can still check out up to 100 items and request up to 30 holds at one time. We have limited access alternatives for various profile types. So like resident limited access, non-resident, reciprocal borrower, etc. The limited access profiles mention in their notes here on the right that no rated R or M audiovisual material may be checked out with that profile type. This would be a library decision to use these profiles. Again, you can see the same profile types available without that limitation. And you will want to note that the use of junior limited access requires a resolution by your local library board, as the library itself has to take financial responsibility of the material that is checked out by that minor. Based on the information provided and our searches, we have determined that this patron does not have an existing account and is eligible for a card at our library. Now we can register them for a new Evergreen Indiana library card. A couple guidelines when you are registering patrons. We want to use USPS abbreviations, so don't use punctuation in the addresses. We want to collect as much information as is reasonable to distinguish each patron from another. And you do not have to enter everything in uppercase letters. In the past, this was something that we did, and I think it had to do with the addresses, but this is no longer a practice that you have to follow and can just enter everything normally. So to register a patron, we can click the register patron link available on the homepage or go into the circulation top navigation menu and click register patron. The register patron form does look a little overwhelming, but we are going to break it down into sections. The fields in yellow are required, or else it will not let you save. All right, so let's look at what fields are available during registration. First things first, at the top, this is where you will scan the new library card, and you want to make sure that it scans correctly. When you click into the username field after you've scanned the barcode, it's going to auto-populate with the card's barcode that you just scanned. This can be changed, the username, at a future date by the patron if they use the My Account feature in the OPAC and possibly through Aspen. I believe that is an option for them. The password is automatically generated with 4 random numbers. We highly recommend that this is a temporary password, and we will cover updating it in a more secure way a little later. Next, we want to enter their primary and preferred name if they have one. We are going to enter what is on the official form of identification, whether it's the license, state ID, or passport. We prefer to include at least a middle initial if it's available. It just helps distinguish between same names. First and last names are required. Name keywords can be useful to help distinguish patrons more from each other. This might include maiden names, alternate nicknames, for example. Those can be included in that field. Holds alias allows for storing an alternate name to appear on hold slips, say if you were using the public hold pickup shelves. Preferred names can be used when the patron uses a different name to what is on their ID, whether it's an alternative to their ID like Bob for Robert, or a chosen name or married name. You don't need to fill out each option for it to appear. If the first name is the only one that has changed, you can just enter that. And if you have entered a preferred name or if one has been used, it's going to show preferred in parentheses next to the patron's name in their account. As you begin entering the patron's information, you may get an alert on the right side of the screen telling you that the entered information has been found in another patron's account. More than one may appear if more than one type is found. The alert is a link that will open the patron search to show you the accounts that have the same info. This doesn't mean that the patron does have an old account. It just means that maybe partners might be sharing the same email address or mailing address. A parent might enter their phone number into their child's account if they don't have their phone number. Or have their own phone number. It's always a good idea to double check. The link does open in a new window, so if you don't find a duplicate, you can just close the tab and continue registration. Date of birth is a required field. If the date you enter is less than 18 years of age, this juvenile button is going to be automatically checked to make the patron a minor. If the patron is a minor, the parent guardian field is used to note the person that is signing or fiscally responsible for that account, whether it is a minor or a community sponsor of a transitional patron. You can enter the adult's name, and if they have their own EI card, you could enter that as well. We no longer require the primary identification to be entered, but if your library chooses to enter a patron's driver's license number, don't enter the entire number. It might be easier if I just show you. So I'm going to go into here and register patron. I've filled out all of this information. We're down to driver's license. So if your library chooses to continue adding the driver's license number, we are going to put the state that issued the driver's license, their abbreviations. So Indiana, and then the last four digits of their driver's license number. This should still be enough information to be able to distinguish between same name people without the privacy issues of storing this type of data within our database. There are a couple options for a patron preferred language. If they have one other than English, you can select it from this dropdown. It's going to ensure that those notices will be created in that language. Forms of contact, a valid email address, while not required, is highly recommended. Patrons have the option to receive checkout receipts, notices, and reminders via email if they wish. They may also wish to have their receipts emailed by default instead of printed upon checkout. If so, you will want to make sure that email checkout receipts by default option is checked. And then so as you are checking out items or when you're finished, when you click that done button, the receipt will automatically email instead of print. So if this isn't common, you might think, oh my gosh, something happened, something's wrong. But a little toast message will appear in the bottom right saying that checkout receipt has been emailed. A patron's primary phone should be placed in the daytime phone field. Evening and other phones can be used for alternate phone numbers. They will need to be formatted the same as a daytime field. The home library and main permission group. This is where we designate those profile options. So when you are logged in as your staff working account, the home library should default to the library that you are logged in within your workstation. So that will appear by default here. And then your main profile permission group will need to be selected. And as you can see, it's yellow, so it is required. When you click on it, it's going to drop down and show you your options. Again, these are based on that patron profile matrix that we looked at a little bit ago. Based on the profile selected, that privilege expiration date will automatically fill in. So example, if you choose resident as your profile type, that expiration date is going to automatically show 2 years in the future on the date. 1 year, for example, if you select non-resident. The internet access level field I don't think it's required anymore because it's not yellow, but it really only does something if you also use a computer management system. Otherwise, it might be a good visual when you bring up patrons' accounts. For example, depending on how you manage your public access computers, there's like, I believe, also non-filtered. Let me bring that up. Unfiltered, and then no access. The active button is automatically checked and needs to remain checked in order for the patron to be able to use their library card. After a couple years, when the patron's account has expired, it will automatically deactivate. So we'll talk a little bit more about why that is important to make sure that that active box is checked. The barred option will prevent the patron from accessing any Evergreen, Indiana service. This is used based on your local policy and what constitutes barring. This is not the same as a patron block. Patron blocks are done automatically when they are no longer in good standing or when they have more than $10 in fines or fees and or 15 or more overdue items on their account. There is a group lead account function within Evergreen. Not all libraries use it. There tend to be questions about privacy when it comes to using it. If your library chooses to use it locally, this option will allow them to view circulation information on the other accounts that are in the group. Again, this is a local policy decided at your library. User settings allow patrons to personalize how they will receive hold notifications, as well as if they'd like to receive overdue or courtesy emails. The default phone number will override the number entered in the daytime field if it is different. If your patron lives closer to another Evergreen Indiana library and wishes to pick up their holds there, you can select that other library for the default hold pickup location. Patrons can choose whether they want phone and or email and or text hold notifications. A valid email must be on file if they want email notices. If SMS is checked, the default SMS number and carrier fields need to be filled out. If your library utilizes whole pickup locations like lockers or bookmobiles, you'll want to use the default whole pickup location option to enter that non-physical location. Next, we need to enter the patron's mailing and or physical address. Many times this is a single address, which means we only need to enter that in the account. Entering the zip code will automatically fill the city, county, state fields. And remember, you will want to use USPS abbreviations when filling out this information. Both a mailing and physical address should be on file if they are different. We have this new address link below the address fields to add another set. And then you'll want to make sure that the correct, the mailing address is checked and the physical address is checked. This will help define where those like print notices are being mailed to if there's like a PO box. Finally, we need to look at our patron statistical categories. StatCats are really useful if you like to keep track of certain patron data for either the annual report or your own library's data. They are managed at the local admin level, but do appear at the bottom of the patron registration page. If you selected the education card type, this is going to be one of the more important ones. When we are using the student main permission profile, whether it's for students at your local schools or for teachers, we need to select an education card type. There's only two choices, student or teacher, and that will help define how many student and teacher cards you have. If your patron is a plaque holder, you will need to select patron's home library that isn't yours from the drop-down list. For example, you might have other local StatCats that help pull information. For example, you might have a StatCat to keep track of your registrants in each of your townships. This will be decided locally by your library. Now that we have entered all of the information, there we need to save, which will create the account. There are two options to save. There's the save button, which will just create the patron account. It's going to clear the page and you can begin a new registration if you need to. Save and clone is going to create the patron's account, but when the register patron page comes back up, certain information like the address will be pre-entered. This is useful if you are registering cards for a family that live at the same address. Just saves a little bit of time. It also from my understanding, will also automatically place any cloned accounts into a patron group. Once I have saved their accounts, I usually like to scan the library card to make sure that it works and that the information is accurate. All right, now we are on to patron accounts. So updating a little more into versus creating and how to, or looking at the account layout and what we are able to do. There are a number of ways we can actually access a patron's account based on what we are doing in the system. However, the most common ways to do so are through patron search and the checkout function. Since we already covered patron search, we are going to look at checkout. We can access checkout by clicking on the checkout items on the home page, by going to the circulation menu and clicking checkout, or by going to the search menu and selecting search by patron barcode, which is a fancier way of saying checkout because it all takes you to this page. We're going to enter the patron's barcode by typing or scanning. And then we are accessing the patron's account. To the left, we have the patron record summary, which displays informative data and the sort of like actions area, which is where we will actually perform the checkouts, pay bills, edit the account, etc. Down here, like many other areas of Evergreen, this is the function or at least in here, I'm calling the account function grid area, where you will manage your columns, affect or change the number of visible rows and actions for those items that have been scanned in. The patron's record summary includes data that was input during registration, like contact information, mailing address, birth date, etc. Below that will be a quick look at current circulation data connected to this specific account. Near the top of the summary is a list of dates. Since they're kind of confusing, I wanted to share what each of these dates mean. So last activity is the last date of any activity, whether it's checkout from like the staff side, if the patron logged into the OPAC, hold placement, etc. Last updated will provide the date that the account was last updated, either by library staff in the web client or by the patron themselves via the OPAC. Create date will be when the account was originally created. Expire date is the date the patron or staff account will expire and no longer allow access to the web client or OPAC. This date is set automatically based on profile type, but can be manually changed. Within the patron's account, we can check out materials to them, view items that are currently checked out, holds, we can pay bills, we can add notes and alerts. This is also where we manage their account, whether it's updating an email address or replacing their library barcode or their library card. Now that we have become a little more familiar with the patron's account, let's go through that second scenario. So we're working at the circulation desk and someone comes in and requests a library card. They've just moved here and still have their physical Evergreen, Indiana card from another member library. Based on your local policy, their identity and proof of residency has been confirmed. So since they have their library card handy, we are going to scan it using the checkout function. Remember, this can be found either the circulation menu or the home page or the search menu. Once we bring up the account, we want to look at that all-important identification information to make sure that the patron standing in front of us is the account we have brought up with the card, because we know that there could be another Kayla L. Sanchez in Evergreen somewhere else in the state. So you want to look at date of birth, proof of person, contact information. If possible, we know email and phone are the most commonly changed details in a patron account, and the listed addresses. If we confirm that the account matches the ID and the person, we can just update the existing account instead of creating a new one. To do that, we want to access the edit function. So we will click on that link in this actions bar. And then it's going to bring us to the edit screen. And it should look familiar to you as it's the same form we used to create the patrons account. When a patron moves from one Evergreen Indiana library to another and we're updating their account, they need a library card from their new home library. When we click Replace Barcode, we can remove the old barcode and insert their new card number. You will want to do the same for their username if it's still pointed at their old library card. Now, some patrons choose to update their username via the OPAC, so if that's the case, you can just leave it. Next, we want to make sure we have their current contact information, email address, and phone numbers. You may also wish to confirm if they still want their checkout receipts emailed by default instead of printed. The other big thing we need to make sure we change is the home library. We want to make sure it is pointing at their new home library, yours, and make sure that the permission group selected is correct based on their address. If you have to change the profile group, the expiration date will update automatically. If you don't, let's say they continue to be a resident, if we realize or if we find that they are still a resident, and we can click the update expire date button to automatically adjust that expiration date based on that selected profile. This is where that active button becomes really important. If the patron came into your library to get a new card after their original account has expired, you want to make sure that active button is checked or rechecked. If it isn't, it's going to keep the patron from checking out material and even accessing their Overdrive account. Not any less important, but we finally want to make sure their user settings, address or addresses, and statistical categories are updated. Of course, once we've done all that, we want to save. While it may sound odd, we do allow patrons to have multiple accounts for specific reasons. Patrons with multiple accounts will need to have them annotated to explain why they are able to have multiple cards so they aren't merged on accident. I always recommend using an alert since it would show up directly underneath the patron's account. One exception may be reciprocal borrower accounts. These should be merged with the resident account for maximum access. There has been some language changes recently since I have made this slide, so I wanted to bring up the procedures guide on reasons why they might have multiple accounts. Here. So this just, let me make this a little bigger. So these are exceptions to merging duplicate accounts. So if a patron resides in one library taxing district and owns property in another, minor patrons with separate fiscally responsible parents, reciprocal borrower, things, and plaque card holders. So all patron alerts and notes are managed under the Notes tab in the patron account. While they can be related to circulation, they can also be generic notes written by staff. It's nice because they are all in one place and can be managed under that single tab. When you look at the tab, it's separated into the Notes area and the Archived Notes area. All interaction with this tab will happen in this first section. And while it probably throws you off a little with it using just the term notes, it is also used for alerts placed on the patron's account. In both sections, I recommend using the grid configuration menus to manage the visible columns and maybe their sizes, as well as determine the default number of rows that can be seen upon clicking the Notes tab. When you click that Create Note button, a pop-up will appear for the actual note or alert creation. While you can see a block button here, library staff should not use it. Blocks on a patron's account are mostly handled automatically by the system, like when they reach that $10 cap in fees or have over 15 overdue items checked out. You also won't manually change the penalty type or depth, as they automatically adjust when you switch between the note and alert tabs. The title is required when it is marked in yellow, but the body of the note or the note text is not. The patron visible button, what this does is allows the patron to see the note or alert through the My Account function in the catalog. Again, the title of the note is required, but the body text is not. When you have entered the note or alert, you will click OK, and it will appear here in your notes grid. Here you can see when the note was created, who created the note, type of note, and I want to point out the column for penalty name. It's a it's not a good word to use because it's not a penalty necessarily. It's just a poor choice of words for that. So it could just be type of note, whether it's alert or silent note. If you selected patron visible, it's going to say yes under that column. And then that red date time column will show you whether or not the patron has seen the note and when they did. Okay, time has passed and maybe we don't need the note or alerts on the patron's account anymore. We could just delete them, but in some cases it might be best to save them, or maybe that's the only option we have when it comes to red notes. So instead of deleting, we can archive them. Know that if you make an alert or note public and the patron has read it in their My Account function, you cannot delete it from the staff side. You can only archive it. So we will select the note. We can right click on it or go to Actions and then select Archive Note. The message will be immediately removed from the top notes section and be moved to the archived notes section. You may need to adjust these dates a little bit so you can actually see any other archive notes that have been placed there. So let's say we created an alert instead of a note, or maybe both. The alert button automatically changes that penalty type to alerting note, no blocks, where the note was note, no blocks. You'll choose if the alert is patron visible, then enter your title and note text, or just the title. Remember, only the title is required. So when you bring up the patron's account, the alert will appear in red below the patron's name. And this will stay there until the alert is either deleted or archived or changed to and from a note, from an alert to a note. Next, managing a patron account, they come in after they get that 30-day notice email and say your account's going to expire, please renew it. When we bring up their card, confirm that everything is still up to date, and then we can just renew their account if everything is the same. We'll go back to that Edit tab, and then under that Home Library and Permission Group, we can click that Update Expire Date, and it's going to automatically update that date 2 years from the current day. If the patron lost their library card and needs a replacement, the library barcode and their account needs to be updated as well. So we're going to go back to that Edit tab. You can see right now that you can't edit the barcode. When you click on Replace Barcode, it's going to turn yellow and allow you to add a new one. Similar to updating a patron's existing account to your library, you might want to look at changing their username to match their new barcode number. And as always, you want to save after you've finished editing. The 4-digit passcode given when patrons register or when we reset the password on our end isn't very secure. We either write it down or tell the patron directly in front of us with possible patrons waiting behind them. If the patron has a valid email address on file, you can use the send a password reset link to their inbox. Once you click this button, a confirmation toast message will appear in the bottom right of the screen. It can take up to, I think, 15 to 30 minutes for that email to be received. The system runs a check every 15 or so minutes to see if there are there's anything queued that needs to be sent. Once they receive the email, that link and the email will send them to the classic catalog where they can enter a new password. Make sure you note that password requirements are a little more secure when changing it via the OPAC versus the patron edit screen, and the link within the email will last only 24 hours before it expires. And then this is just what it will look like. It's just going to take them to the classic catalog where they can create a new password. Evergreen, Indiana will automatically generate notices to patrons. They can be printed and they are like overdue or circulation notices, or email and SMS notifications. All print notices, especially when they are overdue notices, are considered courtesy notices. Upon checkout, the patron's receipt or emailed receipt is considered the official notice of due date. Print notices provided within Evergreen are 14 and 28-day overdues, 28-day overdue and marked lost for fine-free libraries, 45-day overdue and marked lost for non-fine-free libraries. There are also print notices available for damaged items and collections. If a patron has a valid email on file or has set up text notifications, they have the ability to receive these options. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other text notifications, but those are more hold notifications than like necessarily circulation like overdue or these items are due notices. Print notices are accessible on the homepage under the administration column or via the administration top navigation menu. You do not need to be a local admin in order to access them. When you click on it, sometimes you will be asked to log in to view overdue notices. Just enter your staff working account credentials again, and you should be able to access it. You are then taken to the print notices page. They are separated based on notice type, with the most recent at the top of their respective categories. When you click on one of the dates, all associated notices for that date will appear in printable PDF format. So you might have two or three patrons that have overdue material for that day. This is a good time to double check the shelves to make sure the item just wasn't missed upon check-in. And then if your library does this, then mail the letter. You can also see below the date of each notice, it's very small, that it will tell you if there is an email address on the patron's account. That means that they should have received the email notice, but that also depends on if the email on file is valid. Okay, uh, very quickly. User buckets are really cool because they are a digital container where patron records can be gathered together. It allows us to organize, batch edit, report on, and share a group of user records between staff members and sometimes, I think in this case, other library member or member library staff. Examples of use include keeping track of user records for individuals in a classroom, a set of cards for staff at a daycare center, individuals with collection amounts more than 3 years old, kind of anything that you might think of to track in regards to user accounts, you might be able to use a user bucket for. To access the interface, we are going to go into the circulation top navigation menu and select user buckets. The interface is very similar if you have ever used the item buckets or record buckets. You have a tab for adding users to your bucket, the pending users tab, and a tab for managing the bucket, as well as the actual user accounts that are in that bucket. You can see in this bucket view that we can easily delete all users, which we wouldn't want to do anyway. We can batch edit certain features in their accounts, look at the batch edits we just did, and undo batch edits, which is useful if there is a mistake. If your library uses more than the education plaque statistical category, you can also batch modify those from here as well. I do want to point out that I will go ahead and bring this up. Yes, I want to leave this. Um, let's say, so this is the bucket that I've been working with for like Cat 1 and local admin things. So so some libraries accidentally select the plaque like drop down and you can't deselect it. Same with the education staff card type. If you put those user accounts in a user bucket, you can actually, when you select them, or you can batch modify statistical categories and check mark the remove button. When you click remove and apply changes, it's going to remove that and it's back to the way it should be. So that is a very helpful tip if you run into those issues. To create new buckets, we will just go into this bucket drop down, select new, and then we want to enter our name for the bucket. You can be as specific as you want. It's usually helpful. And then a description. You also have the ability to share the bucket with other staff members, and these options can be edited at a later time. Once you create the bucket, you have this information, the bucket ID number, which is very important if you want to share it, the bucket name, the number of items in the bucket, and when it was created. If there was a description, it would show here as well. In the bucket dropdown, you'll also have the ability to edit the bucket. Again, you can change the name, description, and make it shareable. You can delete a bucket from here. And then the shared bucket option will bring up the bucket ID field to search for. So this is why that bucket number is important. You will enter that ID in here and it'll bring up that associated bucket. To add patrons to a user bucket, there are two ways. You can do it within that pending patrons function or using patron search. When you've done your search, you can select them from the grid, and then that add to bucket menu will be available. You can either add it to a brand new bucket and create it on the fly, or add it to an existing bucket. And you can add use within the pending users directly in the bucket module. You can scan the individual barcodes or copy paste. Or what's very helpful is if you've run a report of patron accounts, you have their barcodes, you can save a text file of those barcodes and upload them to a bucket. So you can just upload a bunch of barcodes at once and then add them to your bucket. Make sure you add them to your bucket though, because when you leave and they're stuck in pending users, they will disappear and you will have to re-upload or rescan. It's very frustrating. Under pending users, yeah, you will select and then under right click or go to actions and add to bucket, or you can clear the pending users list. The view batch edit changes button, this is where you will view those and that where you can roll back or delete those batch changes. And when you do roll back, it's going to tell you when you rolled back, which is very helpful in tracking purposes and things like that. Again, you can batch modify those statistical categories, which is really helpful when you mistakenly select an education card type or a plaque library from the drop down. And then the actions menu, there isn't really much you can do in the actions menu. You can either choose to individually edit selected users or remove selected users from bucket. These are important because if you try to batch edit all users, it's going to edit all of the users in the bucket, regardless of whether or not they are selected. If they have the check mark, they are going to edit all of them. If you need to individually edit or like a handful, then you'll probably want to just select them and then individually edit, which will then bring up their accounts in separate tabs. Sharing, make sure you have your bucket ID.